Great. So I'm going to talk to you about a couple of questions today. The first question being quite simply, what is site mapping? Some of you know it. I know some of you are members, and I'm really happy to see some of the community members joining tonight. But maybe some of you or many of you don't really know what it is that we do. So I'm going to tell you a little bit what site mapping is. First of all, everything started with what we called back then sports site mapping. We today call it a site mapping exercise. It's an exploratory exercise that people can use in applied practice. Basically, the characteristics of it is a quite holistic approach. It tries to represent and explore the entire psychological reality of performers and other people. We're going to get to that. But it is very ample. It's quite holistic. And it also is a tangible task. What we did is we created some exercise with tangible components, physical components, that a consultant and a client can work with together, and that the consultant can use to create personal growth and learning environments together with the client. One important aspect of it, you can see it on the slide, is that the psych mapping exploratory exercise created a visual summary of people. This is very important. I'm going to go back to that a lot of time. And another thing, very interesting fact, is that it is an exercise that you guide the client through, especially the first time. With time, you can repeat that exercise. Sports psych mapping or the psych mapping exercise can be repeated in performance psychology practice. And by repeating it, clients become increasingly more autonomous. They take ownership over that exercise to a point where I have sessions where I sit back and I ask my client just to do the exercise, and I'm watching. Okay, so how this all works out, very, very briefly, is you have a set of cards, question cards, that you either read to your client, or once they become a bit more autonomous, you hand them over. They answer a set of questions. You transform their responses about themselves holistically, so about their environment, about who they are, their psychological skills. You transform their answers into short entries on a summary map like the one you can see on that slide. Once they have entered all the answers, you can rate them, you can color them, you can highlight some, and you create what one of my athletes once said, a psychological selfie, a representation of everything that your client was able and willing to share in that session. If you repeat it over time, they become better at it. It becomes a metacognitive training exercise. It is very good for exploratory purposes, have a first interview. It is quite good for a pre-post measure if you have interventions. It is so useful. And at least we're going to hear something from Pau and Josh later, but for most people that I've known, it has slightly transformed and improved their professional practice without being very, very complicated. Actually, it was so important and it's so impactful to some of us that psych mapping became, I wouldn't say a professional philosophy, at least not yet. Maybe in 20 years we get there, but it became some sort of a way of conducting performance psychology, which is to a big degree defined as a relativist, pragmatistic, and eclectic approach. Relativistic because from psych mapping itself isn't based on truth. It's based on the knowledge map, and the knowledge map isn't a truthful representation of people and their behavior. It is an oversimplified, almost schema of people and their behavior. But it is incredibly useful. But it applies this idea of relativism, that there is not one way of seeing people. The question is, which way do you like? And that's where pragmatism comes in. Everything we do in psych mapping is thought to be useful. If something's not useful, we drop it. It has to be useful. It has to be useful for us to conduct sessions. It has to be useful to our clients in their personal growth, their performance, or whatever it is they're trying to achieve. And it's eclectic. People we have in the psych mapping community, even the people that we created psych mapping, have quite different approaches, from systemic, humanistic, cognitive, and behavioral approaches. And psych mapping fits in with every of these approaches because it is trans-theoretical. It's based on the knowledge map. I won't talk too much about the knowledge map today, but the knowledge map is a summary of everything that has been studied in performance, sport and exercise psychology mainly, but performance psychology generally. And that included every single theory that has been worked in, well, the past 50, 60 years. That's nice. The next thing is that the whole idea is to be a multicultural and a multidisciplinary society. I love universities when they turn off the light while somebody's in the room. Anyway, we are multicultural, we are transdisciplinary. One of the things we want, and I'm going to talk about the psych mapping community in a second, is get people from all around the world, because people from all around the world have different views. And sport and exercise performance psychology is growing everywhere. And the transdisciplinarity is thought that whatever we do when we work with people in their performance, we can't work it from a single perspective. I work a lot in sports, and coaches can't work isolated from nutritionists. They can't work in isolation of physiotherapists. They can't work in isolation of psychologists. So in psych mapping, we try to give a place to everyone. One of the interesting things in psych mapping that goes right to the exercise is a triangular relationship and consultation. We go away from the typical discussion about client-centeredness or practitioner-led approaches, and we put in tasks, tangible tasks that mediate that relationship. A task can be more driven by the consultant, it can be more driven by the client, but the task creates a triangular relationship instead of a, let's say, one-on-one relationship. It gives a lot of importance to visual representations for different reasons. One is, of course, visual representations like the one you can see simplify complex realities, but visual representations, they also create a shared basis for knowledge exchange between professionals. Psych mapping is also a community. I won't go too much into the community because we have our Secretary of Communication who will say a couple of things about it, but just some basic things. First, we have a website at psychmapping.com. It's kind of our clubhouse. It took us a year to establish that, but it's very important because there we house all our materials, and from there we launch all our activities like the one today. We're establishing peer consultancy sessions. Paul might talk a little bit about that, where because we have that shared language now, we can share maps and talk about clients with their permission or within our professional societies. And we help each other. And that goes together with the multiculturality and also the transdisciplinarity. We have advanced courses go beyond what I'm going to present today. We have some internal projects. We are working on many more applications of psych mapping. Today, I'm going to explain to you in the courses about the psych mapping exercise, which is a one-on-one exercise where the client works together with the consultant to draw their psychological reality into a map like the one you can see. But we are also working on team maps. We are working on maps how supervisors, teachers, or coaches can represent the people they work with. And we work, for example, with an application that's called meta mapping, which is a metacognitive training based on those visual representations. And we have our external partnerships. From our external partnerships, we have partnerships in applied sports right now, like we have a professional basketball club, and we also have partnerships within research institutions. Right now, we have partnerships with Greece and Norway, but we just started 3 months ago, so that's growing pretty fast. So that is what psych mapping is. I hope you have more or less an idea. Now, next question is, who is psych mapping for? And I'm just going to drop a lot on you now. But let's start where everything started. Psych mapping was always there to assist for those who assist others in achieving performance, learning, a healthier life, and personal growth. Performance has always been there because we come from sport and exercise psychology. Learning has always been there because we work in universities. The healthier life is something we work on pretty intensively right now at the University of Suffolk with a project called Health Behavior Mapping. And personal growth, well, I think that is present in each of these other three ideas. So who is using psych mapping? Who could do that course that I'm going to present you? Well, of course, sport and exercise psychologists, but not only sport and exercise psychologists, also other types of performance psychologists or educational psychologists or health psychologists, industrial and organizational psychologists, or just to put something in where I have no idea about that, but military psychologists and many more. I don't want to list everything, but it is so trans-theoretical and it goes beyond the boundaries of a single context like sport and exercise. That's why we dropped the name sport or sports psych mapping, because at the end, that name only gave the wrong impression that this could only be applied to sport and exercise. Actually, one of the first contexts where we tested the psych mapping exercise was with industrial researchers in BT and Ipswich in British Telecom. So you get the idea. Beyond that, Other people who assist others in achieving performance, learning, healthier lives and personal growth could be medical doctors, nurses, nutritionists. We've worked with teachers. We've worked with, of course, we worked with plenty of coaches, also with mental health counselors who are not psychologists, also with social workers and life coaches. A part of what people have as certifications, we also work with people because of what they actually do in their job, having very different types of academic backgrounds, for example. So there we work with line managers who have to watch over employees. We work with team leaders, HR personnel. We work with mentors and tutors in different universities and schools, student support staff generally, and even parents have worked with us. And finally, if we look at the developmental stage of the people we work with undergraduate students who get the first idea of a real applied tool, something they could use one day. One of our psych maps have told me that this was a huge inspiration for her, because for the first time, being a third-year student, she could actually see how she could handle a session with somebody, which is pretty nice in a psych mapping exercise for those who are developing, because it really gives you a very concrete, applicable solution. There's also master students, many master students and PhD candidates. We work with early career professionals quite a lot. Researchers, sports psych mapping or psych mapping can be used as a research tool because, well, it can replace a specific interview and create a holistic examination of, participants' psychological reality, pre-post intervention, for example. We also have experienced professionals. If you go on our website, we have a members area, and you can read, for example, about somebody who has been 30 years working in sport and exercise psychology and still found that psych mapping had a huge impact on her professional life. And lay people who just simply need that for their job and doing diverse roles that I talked about before. So let's get into the course. What is it that we propose? I mean, of course, we teach about psych mapping, but how does it work? Well, first of all, it is completely autonomous. It's completely, it is completely virtual. That's what I wanted to say. So people can connect from Europe, where I'm right now. People can connect from America, where Josh is. People could connect from Asia, from Africa, from Australia. One of the problems we had for our prior course, that it ran on weekends and it ran from 8 in the morning till 8 in the evening. Well, at least for me, for some others, well, I knew some people from Peru. They joined us at, I have no idea, 3 in the morning, and it ended at 3 in the afternoon. We had somebody from Asia who basically joined us at 10 in the evening and worked throughout the night. So it is completely virtual, so you can do it from wherever you want. Plus, it's completely autonomous. You can do it whenever you want. There is no constraints. You can work in the morning, you can work in the evenings, you can work at night, you can work 4 hours in a row, split it up to half an hour sessions. It's completely up to you. One of the things that I've been working on most, and which, to be honest, it has been a huge headache because I'm not good at it, that most of the content comes in audio recordings, like a podcast. There's about 10 to 12 hours of pure content on podcasts and different episodes, of course, because otherwise you'd go mad. So you can actually do the course while taking a walk, while cooking, while taking a bath, while cleaning the house, when driving on the bus, or the way I do almost all my research lately while traveling on Ryanair or another cheap flight company. Maybe you're lucky and you can actually afford a real air company. But yeah, that's the idea. There are some exercises, but they're voluntary. So the idea is we have so many different people in our course. So many people could take it. And we know not everybody will learn the same. Not everybody will learn with the same depth. There are things that lay people will just say, hey, yeah, that makes sense. And an expert will think over and mold over for hours because they have different understandings. The important thing that everybody can get something that is important for their professional life. Now, the voluntary exercises, a typical example is you can do them once, you can do them twice or 3 times, or you just skip them. The level of how deep you want to get into this psych mapping is completely up to you. The same thing with the learning quizzes. There are some learning quizzes in the content where you can test your own progress. They're not going to get graded. There is a final test that you have to pass, but honestly, it's the easiest one. Again, there's a lot of learning opportunities which are voluntary. It's completely up to you. We try and make this fit in the diverse and almost always complicated lives that you have. There's no time pressure. It's true, there's a 4-month limit, but that's just for bureaucratic reasons. If you need more than 4 months, you just send me an email or I contact you and we give you more time. There's no time pressure. You can do it in 3 days. You can do it in a year. It's completely up to you. There's not that much to do for a year, but still. And once you're done, you keep all the materials. So you keep the question cards, you keep the summary maps, you keep the guide, you keep the online version. It's yours and you can do with it whatever you want. You can change it, manipulate it, mold it into something different, combine it with your own procedures. It's completely up to you. You're going to be part of, you're going to be a psych mapper and you can do with that content whatever you like. So what are the aims of the course? There are 3 big aims in this course. The first one is to get you acquainted with the psych mapping philosophy. The psych mapping philosophy, I said some of those things before, it considers tangible tasks that mediate the relationship between the consultants and the participants. Instead of only looking at consultant-centered and participant-led consultancy, what we look at is the role the consultant plays in helping the participant complete tasks that give them learning opportunities, personal growth opportunities, and that help them for behavior change, which is in many cases something we need. There's also a question of visual representations and take-home products. The visual representations are great, but there's something even better to it. Once somebody does a psych mapping exercise, they take the map home. If it's live, it is here. If it's here in the university, they take a piece of paper away from that session. If it's online, of course, they get it digitally. But those take-home products, they have a couple of advantages which are very important. One is the benefits of what happened during a session. They seem to act more prolongedly because people have a memory aid of what happened during the session. Ideas, discussions, inputs, feedbacks, they're more easy to be remembered if you have a summary map. You could give somebody a summary, a written summary, but now let's be honest, how many times people read that? But a visual map, I found visual maps hanging on dorm walls in sport academies, on screensavers with programmers. It is something that people like and people appreciate. And it's a good proof of value for money, because even a month later after a session, you think back, you might not remember what happened, but there is a product that you've taken away. And not just something that I pulled out of a cupboard. No, it's something that you actually worked on and worked throughout the session. The third pillar of the philosophy that we're going to talk about is the psych mapping community. On the one hand, because we want to promote the psych mapping community. So we want people to join because that's where the fun is. But on the other hand, it gives that multidisciplinary, multicultural growth context for professional development. Next, we teach about the knowledge map. The knowledge map is the theoretical basis for psych mapping. The knowledge map was basically a summary of all that has been published in sport and exercise psychology. We read over 650 papers, organized stuff, concepts in the way we could, and then created some sort of model. So what we teach in the course is what the knowledge map is and what it is not. Okay, that's also very important. That's when our relativistic stance comes in. The knowledge map is not about truth. It is mainly 99% about usefulness. And believe me, useful it is. We talk a lot about the organization within the knowledge map. One of the metaphors we use is to say the knowledge map is a wardrobe that organizes research concepts or concepts within performance psychology. And we're going to go through that organization because that decides the questions in the psych mapping exercise. We can cover holistically almost the entire spectrum of psychological realities because we have that organization in the knowledge map. And then we talk about the explanations the knowledge map gives. It doesn't give completely correct answers. If you're a niche topic expert like I am, I'm an expert in self-talk, you will find out that the knowledge map, in my case, it maybe contains 10% of what I know about self-talk. So it's just a fraction. But a lot of times we get so caught up in that what we know and we know in depth that it is hard to explain things with the bigger picture. And the real questions of real people in the real world, they need holistic answers. So while the knowledge map only explained me 10% of my self-talk knowledge, it let me see 1,000% of what I've seen before in performance psychology. It gave me that holistic approach to people. And of course, the third and most important aim is we want you to learn to use the psych mapping exercise. We're going to show you the step-by-step guide. We're going to teach you how to use different psych mapping materials from the online version that you can use in Teams, for example, or in Skype, works perfectly fine, although it's homemade, so it's not like a huge app, but it does work, to the to the question cards that you can print out and give to your participants. You have no idea how impactful it is when a participant, a client, holds the questions of an interview, of an exercise in their hand. I've seen the dynamic of a session change the moment that I handed over the cards. I just said, yeah, we're gonna explore your psychological reality. Here, these are the questions. People, they get control. They take ownership over the session. It is amazing. And I really hope that some of you, or most of you, have one day the opportunity to see that. And then we teach practical skills, from formulating questions, adapting questions on the go, adapting questions on the maps, to how to convert longer answers into those short entries on the map without losing too much meaning and without making the map something that the participant or the client can't recognize anymore, how to make summaries, and how to analyze and interpret the summary map once the participant leaves. So the summary map isn't a reflection of truth. It is a good point, a starting point for further exploration. But it can be interpreted in a way that you can start formulating even intervention programs based on a well-done summary map. So if you're interested, I hope you're all interested, and you hope that you know people who would be interested. If you wonder how you get started, it's very easy. You have to go into the University of Suffolk. There we have the Psych Mapping Foundation course page, and from there you can go to our shop. I'm going to advance it. It's £45. We really work really hard to make this affordable. I'm going to get back to that in a moment. Now, because I have no idea how the universities work, but you can't find this page. Even if you put in the Psych Mapping Foundation course in Google, you can't find it. Where you actually find access to those pages is on our website on www.psychmapping.com. You're going to see there's a course page. If you go on top right top corner, you hit course, you're going to see a page, and there it says register. If you press register, you go on one of those University of Suffolk pages, or you find us on Twitter. I'm not really good at any social media. I got people finally to work on our Psych Mapping Twitter page. That's @PsychMapping, and there you always find new tweets, and they usually contain links to the online shop. Once you pay, you have to wait a couple of hours, maybe a day, until you get your access codes, and then you can go onto our virtual learning environment, which is Brightspace. There's a video that teaches you how to do that. The course is in 2 languages, Spanish and English. So you just choose which block you want to do, the English one or the Spanish one. Or if you want to learn languages, well, maybe that's a way to do it. I have no idea. But if you have any problems, either finding the Psych Mapping course page, deciding if to do the course, signing up, understanding the shop if your English isn't your first language, or getting anything done in the Brightspace, which it's almost impossible with everything that I've done the past 40 hours. You can still email me. It's a.latignac@uos.ac.uk. So I'm going to wrap this up now. I have no idea how long I've been talking, but I think I've said almost everything I want to do. Some key ideas. Psych mapping is widely applicable. You can use it in sport and exercise. Yes, you can use it in performance context. You can use it in learning context. We have a huge project right now in universities testing student psychological reality while studying. And the results, one day I'm going to publish them. They're amazing. It's incredible what we found out. From mental health to performance-related variables. There's so much in it. It's really incredible. And that also means that the course is meant for many, many different people, not only sport and exercise psychologists, not only performance psychologists, not only psychologists. It can help everyone. Everybody's going to learn something different. The way I'm going to look at the course as a sport and exercise performance psychologist, an expert more or less, will be different than somebody who has never done psychology. But I hope that the way I've done it, there's something in there for everyone. The Psych Mapping course was designed in different ways to be affordable. The past course, weekend course, was almost €200, £175. We brought that down to £45, €50. By the way, there is no direct contact in the course, because if I would have put even 30 minutes of tutorials, the price would have doubled. But we have Q&A days in our community, which are the hidden tutorials. It is practical, so you learn something that will help you in your professional life, even sometimes in your personal life. But that's the idea. Once you finish the course, you will have an asset for your professional practice. You even have an asset for research if you're a researcher, but that is what it is. It has to be useful. This is one of our highest criterion. It has to be useful. The course is flexible. It should fit into all our very different lives. People who have more time in the mornings, people who have time in the afternoons, people who want to study while traveling, people who want to sit down. There is a way to do it that everyone can actually engage, and it's dynamic. It's not only audio recordings. There are quizzes, there are exercises, there are videos. There's sometimes you have to listen to answers from clients and convert them into entries on the map. Sometimes you have to manipulate question cast. It's dynamic. There's a lot to do, and some of the things I'm sure everyone will find something that they like to do. So I'm going to end here. Start whenever you like, work whenever you want. There's no constrictions from wherever you prefer. It's not important. Take all the time that you need, and especially benefit as much as you can. Okay then, so that was me. And I have no idea why the light goes out in my university. But while I'm going to go back and turn the light on, I'm just going to stop the recording, and I'm going to first give you a minute if somebody has any questions.